Audience targeting. This is one of our three primary components of marketing: right message, right time, right audience. If you don't get the audience right, your marketing campaigns are often going to fail because you're not marketing at the right time, you're not marketing on the right platform, you are not giving the right message to the right audiences. So we have to really understand who our customers, who our patients are. Now, of course, most healthcare executives are going to have a pretty good sense of that. Maybe every once in a while you've got a private equity firm or an organization that hires someone from outside the space, and so they don't have a good strong understanding of it. Maybe they're learning it, but people on your team, hopefully your marketing agency partners, should know this by now that you're able to learn from. We do want to get deeper with it though. So maybe we understand that we're targeting, let's say we're doing teen treatment. So we know that we're targeting moms of teens. Super simple, but what is important to those moms? What's important to them at different stages of the journey when they're making the decision for treatment? How are they thinking about it? How are we messaging? Versus if they're just considering treatment as an option, versus if their kid just started having problems and so not even sure what's available out there, and so we need to do awareness campaigns. Or understanding the pain point at the different stages of the patient journey is just as important as understanding who our potential patients are for us to be successful. So in this, I'm just going to run through the different criteria that we have for creating personas, and then I will show how we can actually target that really specifically using different channels, and especially some of the really sophisticated digital tools that are available on some of these paid media platforms. And then after that, we'll talk and dive into the strategy component of it and how do we make sure that we're aligning our organizational budget with ROI, which different stages of the patient journey, versus your top of funnel versus your mid funnel versus your bottom of funnel. We have to think through all of this stuff to be successful from an ROI standpoint. So I'll give as much of an in-depth overview as possible here because this is a piece that we have to get right. Who are we targeting? You can target by geography. Where do people live? That's obviously really critical for most providers because a lot of patients are only willing to travel so far. And that has a big effect on your success of any marketing campaign. If you're marketing too far away, you will see obviously a reduction in efficacy and a reduction in results the farther out you get. Now, there are diminishing returns there and there's value there. So if you're a larger provider, if you need more patient volume, then you might be willing to go farther out geographically as long as the cost of going farther out, even for a diminished return, is still profitable in some way, shape, or form. So there's that cost benefit analysis that we're always doing. Age, gender, income level, education level, all this demographic information is information that is available on most platforms. So we should know who our patients are so that we can target them effectively on these platforms or when we're buying third-party data. Very, very obviously important for us to be successful. Appearance is an important part. We can't target people based on their hair color or how long their hair is or what they look like, but we can absolutely do that through messaging and our images that we use in our ad campaigns. So let's say as a provider, you have a lot of patients that come in with tattoos. When you run marketing campaigns and on your website, you should have patients or people in those images with lots of tattoos because I want to know, do the patients that you serve look like me? That gives me confidence that you can help people like me or that I'm going to be comfortable in your office, in the waiting room as I'm there. Very important to make sure that we're matching it. We see this as a mistake so often. I go into a website and they're serving a lot of patients with tattoos, and all I see on the website is stock images of like upper middle class families on the couch watching TV. That disconnect is not going to be effective from a marketing standpoint. So we really want to make sure that we get this piece right as well. What do our patients look like? Is that reflected in our advertising campaigns and marketing materials? Lots of interest-based targeting is potentially going to change our messaging, is potentially going to change where we market. So in the TV and radio training that we did, I talked about our rock audience being different from our country music audience, being different from our pop audience. People that are listening to Billie Eilish are going to be usually at a different age demographic than people listening to Madonna. And so those choices and their interests are actually going to help us inform which channels we would be marketing on for radio, or which stations we'd be marketing on for radio, which times of the day we'd be marketing on for radio. Who's listening to the radio at 6 a.m.? It's probably not your teeny boppers. It's going to be working individuals. And so that helps us make strategic decisions in terms of targeting. Also, we want to think through individuals, like if we're looking at income levels, for example. If I see people searching for luxury vacations, I'll show you guys that that's a target that's potentially available on a lot of advertising platforms. And so if they're looking for luxury vacations, I have a sense that they are at a higher income level. And so I'm going to be able to use private pay services or out-of-pocket services, like maybe we're doing 4-on-4 dental implants, like a really high cost procedure that is not covered by insurance. I'm going to build that luxury targeting in. And so when I understand those interests and how that aligns with our target patient population, helps me make strategic decisions from the marketing side. Pain points are critical. We might know who our patient is. So we're looking at physical therapy or orthopedic surgery. And so we know we get a lot of senior citizens in that have knee problems or hip problems, for example. But what is their pain point? What really motivates them to come into care? Is it the fact that their knee hurts? Is it the fact that they can't do their ADLs? Is it the fact that they can't play with their grandkids the way that they would want to? Like, what is the pain point that actually motivates them to take action? We want to understand that messaging so we can get it right in our ad campaigns. Pain points will change over time. So if we take an individual who's looking for teeth whitening services, maybe it's not a big deal at first and they're a little bit concerned about it. And so all they're doing is using the free services available, or not the free, but the cheap services available from take-home kits at Walmart. But then they start getting comments from colleagues, from family that, hey, your teeth are discolored. And so then they start to get more serious about it. And so then they have a different pain point, and they're not just worried about kind of self-confidence, but they're starting to be worried about how other people perceive them. And so they're going to be more willing to get treatment, right? Different messaging for the take-home kit versus the professional services. If I have a parent that's looking at needs for counseling for their teen, if the kid's just starting to maybe get some lower grades, maybe there's some battles at home, some arguments, that's one pain point. But now if my kids progress and they're not going to school and they are depressed all the time and they're getting into fights all the time, that's a different pain point that I can use to encourage parents to seek a higher level of care. Maybe the parents are seeking that level of care and they've already gone to a couple programs, but they didn't get enough information from those programs. And so their pain point is that they didn't feel like there was strong communication. And so if I understand that that's a pain point, then we can use that in our marketing materials, as well as give feedback to the provider and say, hey, look, you've got people that really want good communication. They're not getting it. That's something that you should be incorporating into your program. Your marketing feedback loop should always have a component where your marketing team is telling you things that you might not be aware of, or advantages, changes you could make to the program, things that aren't working, right? Marketing is not just about awareness and conversion. It's also about informing your program to let you know what's going on that you can make better, or expansion opportunities. Maybe we even know we're an adult provider and we even know there was a huge need for teens. We're starting to hear it. We get it through the marketing in terms of comments on the Facebook ads, in terms of what we're hearing from community partners as we do outreach. That can go back and inform. So it's important to understand all the different pain points, how that applies to the different messaging in the different ads. Desires is the same thing, right? So some of our cosmetic services are not going to be a pain point. It's more often a desire, something that people want to do voluntarily, out of pocket. And so if we understand what the desire is, we can message appropriately in the campaigns. Thinking through all of this, where people frequent, is really helpful as well. Let's say that we've got individuals looking for a substance use treatment. What's one place that a lot of people are going to go is going to be support meetings, right? Alcoholics Anonymous, Smart Recovery, Al-Anon for the families. That's a great place to be. What's another place that people seek help for SUD or behavioral health issues? It's their family practitioner. It might be their church community. And so advertising in those areas, because we can geofence that, we can go and find all the churches in a given area and then just run marketing around those churches during Sunday services to communicate with people that might be looking for treatment for mental health conditions or substance use conditions. A lot of providers go to the hospital. And so that's a good referral partner for a lot of different service lines within healthcare. Well, we can geo-target the hospital. We know that because a lot of patients are coming from there, that's a good place to reach patients. So if we know where they frequent, we can obviously do boots on the ground outreach, build referral relationships with those partners, but we can also do geo-fenced marketing from the digital side that will get in front of patients as they're walking out or they're sitting in the ER lobby on their phone, right? Bored, waiting for their turn to come up, or they're anxious and looking for treatment solutions. Then we can pop up in those situations. By understanding where they go, we can be very, very effective in our marketing campaigns, and that is part of audience persona building. The patient journey I talked about a lot. You have a difference between someone who's not aware of your services, who's thinking about services but comparing providers, versus someone who needs treatment now. That also comes down to a channel strategy and a messaging strategy. So if I have someone that's searching for dental implants, or I have someone that's searching for LASIK surgery and they want that now, they're looking for a near me. That is going to be a Google ad campaign search. But if they're just researching options and saying, well, glasses versus contacts versus surgery, or at-home teeth whitening versus professional services, that messaging then affects and say, okay, look, I know I need good SEO. I need good content on the website that answers those questions so that when people search for them, they're going to find our website, see us, read about it. Or I'm going to push that out. I'm going to push that out on X. I'm going to push that out on Facebook. I'm going to get in front of the right people that way. Another thing to think about is also who uses what platform. So older individuals, senior citizens are more likely to use Bing than are younger individuals. So if I'm trying to reach that patient population, I'm going to be more likely to use Bing for senior care services than I would for anyone that's younger. I'm going to use Google for those other channels. Same thing, like I might use Facebook because that's a little bit of an older demographic than TikTok. I can reach more older individuals on Facebook than I can on TikTok. So it increases my total addressable market by choosing the platform and being smart about it and understanding from a patient journey standpoint where they are at these different stages. So I'm making a decision. I'm using Bing ads. I'm using Google ads. I'm in a consideration stage. I'm thinking SEO. I'm thinking blog content. I'm thinking Facebook. I'm thinking TikTok. That patient journey component helps me understand where to market and where to invest budget. I always get asked this question, can we target insurance policies? Can we target people with Cigna? Can we target people with UMR? Because it pays really well for a lot of commercial and out-of-network contracts. The answer is no. If anyone tells you they can target by insurance policy, they are lying. There are obviously major HIPAA compliance, legal issues, liability issues around sharing patient data. So no one is ever going to have a list of patients with insurance that they're going to be willing to share with you or sell to you in any way that would be legal. So that information does not exist out there. Now you can use proxies. So let's say that we offer commercial insurance or we only provide services for the commercially insured. Well, higher income zip codes and higher income areas of the city are going to be areas that we can target. We can also do an analysis around hospitals in the area. A lot of hospitals will publish their data to some degree and say what percentage is Medicaid versus Medicare versus commercial insurance. And when we pull up that data, we see, okay, the hospital on the west side of town has 60% Medicaid, and the hospital on the east side of town is only 30% Medicaid. Well, if we're focusing on commercial insurance, we know that we should be targeting our marketing efforts and our outreach efforts on the east side of town, because clearly there are more commercially insured on the east side. So we're using proxies to get a sense of where insurance is. We also can understand from employer data. Like we know Google has a certain insurance policy. We know a lot of unions or a lot of government employees have a certain insurance policies. We can target those individuals both from boots on the ground outreach as well as digital strategies by targeting that employer. You can do that on LinkedIn, you can do that on Facebook, you can do that on a lot of digital channels. So there are proxies to be able to target insurance contracts, but there is no list or a way you can tell Facebook to target a policy. The same goes for Google. We get a lot of questions around, well, Don't people search for dental services with Cigna or LASIK surgery? Well, not LASIK surgery, but let's say SUD services or behavioral health services with Blue Cross Blue Shield. There is a very little bit of search volume for that, but if you look on Google, you'll actually see that there's so little search volume nationally that they often won't even give you a number. They'll just tell you that the search volume is too small to give any kind of data feedback. So you can target these from an SEO and a Google or a Bing ad standpoint, but you might literally get one click a year because the search volume is so small. So there's not an effective way to really target even from a search standpoint, because people just don't include it in their search. It's just not part of what people do. All right, digital capabilities. Let's get into it. How can we actually do this? How can we actually see what's working on the back end? So I'll do a quick run through of what's possible, and then I'll show you an example of how that would look at the back end so you can kind of see all the options available. We can geofence anything. Different platforms have different availability. Sometimes it's only a mile radius. Sometimes the minimum is a 10-mile radius. But you can always target a radius around a zip code, a radius around a city, a radius around an address, and you can also exclude. So all of these things that I'm talking about here, you have the ability to target them specifically, and you have the ability to exclude them. So let's say that I wanted to target Nashville as a city, but I wanted to exclude 2 zip codes because the traffic's too bad or we don't take the policies that come from that area. And so I can exclude those. That's all possible. So your geofencing is what's often called. So we geofence a radius or we geo-target specific locations. We can target by demographic on almost every platform. So gender, age, income level, education level. Just be aware that none of these platforms are perfect, especially when you get to things like income level. We'll get a lot of private pay providers that want to target obviously the upper 10% or the top 1% and say, well, we just want to target people that have the money to afford our high-end services. Obviously understandable. These platforms are really just building proxies. They don't have that income data, right? No one's sharing their net worth. No one's sharing their tax forms with Facebook or with X or with Google. So they're just making guesses based on search behavior, based on purchase history. They're tracking purchases of what people have, income targeting based on zip codes, where people tend to live, average housing costs. So these proxies are made. So you can do some income targeting, just be aware it's very, very fluffy in terms of efficacy. Interest, we can target lots of interests. I'll show you that in a second. Visit engagement history is something that people are becoming more and more aware that's possible. So you're often doing it for your own website or your own content. If someone visits your website, all of these advertising platforms have pixels or trackers where you put a cookie on that person's browser and you can follow them around the web. We're all used to that. Now in healthcare, again, we can't do that. We do not have the potential due to privacy concerns and HIPAA compliance and other laws related to healthcare that's specific to us. So we cannot follow people that visited a website, but just know that it is possible. What we can do is we can use platform-specific data. So if an individual interacts with an ad, watches a video, fills out a lead form on Facebook, on X, on LinkedIn, because that data is not being transferred from us to them, that's the data that's owned by the platform, that's already there. There's no violation, there's no HIPAA concerns happening. And so we can actually retarget off of that behavior. So that's possible. So just be aware of that. You can also technically get data from other people. It's possible in other verticals, again, not healthcare because of the privacy concerns, but you can partner with other brands. They might be willing to share an audience with you that they've created. They might be able to share a pixel data with you or tracking data with you. So just know that these things are possible, just unfortunately not in healthcare. So retargeting, as I just talked about, we can't do it in healthcare, but it's very, very powerful in things like e-commerce or really any other vertical. When someone hits your website, you quickly take them and you follow them around the web, and you'll see much higher conversion rates when you're constantly kind of nudging people and reminding them, like, oh yeah, I really do want to get that thing. I'll go and do that now, where they wouldn't have taken that action if you hadn't been following them around the web. We can track purchase history. Now, this usually is not given as data on the back end like Facebook or X, but you'll see it in Amazon, for example. So if you're advertising on Amazon, You can find people that have certain types of purchase history. Did they buy a book in their recent past? Was it a sci-fi book? So I can then market to individuals based on their purchase behavior. And of course, a lot of providers have this data as well. Starbucks, when you buy through the app, they know what you buy, they know what you like. If they see that you haven't bought anything from Starbucks in the past month, when you used to buy something every week, that purchase history might trigger an automation that then sends you a free coupon and says, hey, why don't you come back into Starbucks and try your favorite drink that you've been doing? Walmart does this, grocery stores do this. They have all of your purchase history and your data. And so they will email you and see if you're kind of dropping off. They'll try to bring you back. Or they just want to keep you engaged with the platform. So they'll send you a birthday coupon for your favorite drink or your favorite food or whatever it is. So purchase history is something that's very possible on a lot of digital platforms. Lookalikes and AI targeting, I do want to mention that because it's something that people don't understand a lot. It's valuable to know. It's actually becoming more and more important, especially on the AI side. Lookalikes just means that they're taking a set of data who are usually your patients. So you feed a lookalike audience oftentimes into these platforms. You say, hey, here's a list of 100 patients. And from that list, what are the common data points that we can then find on these platforms? So it might look at income level, it might look at gender, it might look at where they live, and it's going to match up those data points, and then it's going to create another audience using all of its data on the back end of people who match those commonalities and then help you advertise to them. It's really valuable if you don't know who your audience is. Again, most people know who their audience is. They know what the age is, they know the gender, they know the income level, they know where they live. And so there's not often a lot of value for lookalikes within healthcare for that reason, because we already know who we're targeting. A lookalike is really if you don't know who you're targeting and are able to build those criteria into the back end. Another thing with healthcare is there's often not a lot of differentiation between services. Who's going to use dental services? Almost everybody. Who potentially needs eye care, LASIK? I mean, obviously anyone with glasses, but there's no difference between income level, age, gender, right? There's not a lot of targeting capabilities in there. So your lookalike audience is not going to find anything that's different about your target audience that you don't already know. So lookalikes just don't have the strength to get results that are different from what you already know compared to a lot of other healthcare verticals. Now, with that said, AI targeting is extremely powerful and getting better and better. So what AI targeting does is you leave your audiences broader. So you say, I just want to kind of target everyone that's living in the San Diego area. And I'm going to let the AI kind of figure out who our right audience is without giving it a lot of criteria. Why is that powerful? So it's doing something similar to what a lookalike audience is. It's taking commonalities and data points, who clicked, who watched the video, who followed through to schedule an assessment, or actually click the call button, and can use that information. But where it gets powerful is in ways that you wouldn't be able to test cost effectively, or ways that you might not be thinking about. So I'll give you an example of two things that happened to me. So one, I travel a lot. I'm constantly on the road for work, doing consulting with different organizations. And so I was in San Antonio, and then I started getting advertisements for hotels that catered to business professionals in different cities. Why am I getting that information? Because Facebook knows, this particular ad was on Facebook, it sees me traveling all the time. Facebook's following you, you have your location services turned on, it knows where you are. So unless you've turned those off, Facebook knows where you are at all times, and it sees I'm constantly on the road. And it sees my click history, it sees what websites I'm clicking over to. It has a pretty good idea that I do a lot of business travel. And so because of that, it identifies me as a good target for this hotel chain that's trying to market their business hotel services. They might not have been able to identify me through backend targeting capabilities. How do they know I'm in San Antonio? They have no idea. But the AI knows that's where I am, fits my user profile, and so starts sending me advertisements for these business hotel services in different cities. Because again, the AI also knows that this was not a one-time trip. It knows that I'm taking lots of trips. And so this particular hotel chain has locations all over the country, I could be a good potential customer for them. Another example, researching African safari trips. So researching luxury African safari trips in particular, the AI knows that individuals that are searching for a luxury trip probably take numerous luxury trips. And there's only a certain amount of people that are going to be able to afford that kind of trip. And so it's going to take other advertisers from the luxury travel section. So I started getting advertisements for the Maldives. I started getting advertisements for nice hotels in Europe. I started getting advertisements for Fiji, because the AI has understood, just based on my search history and what it knows about me, that I am the right demographic for these kinds of trips. It's going to push advertising to me that there's no way that the company sort of identified that otherwise. So AI targeting is actually really useful because it will allow you to target people that you just wouldn't have thought of or wouldn't have been able to identify on your own. All right, so this is the back end of Facebook. Almost all of the paid media platforms have very similar tools on the back end. So just showing you this one will give you a good example of what you're capable of on almost any platform, from X to LinkedIn to digital streaming services to digital TV tools. So the first thing that we can see is location. So we can type in a location and that will pop it up. And do we want to do the DMA? Do we want to do the city? Then we have radius options. Are we do a 10-mile radius? Are we do a 50-mile radius? You can do as small as a 1-mile radius for some platforms. Every platform has different limits or variables. You can exclude these as well as include them. So maybe I want to do a city and then I want to exclude certain zip codes. That's all possible here. You can literally just drop a pin and pick a place and then do a radius around it. So lots of geo-fencing capabilities on all of these advertisement platforms. Age, gender, all the basic stuff there. Very easy to do. Now, here we can look at all the powerful demographic and interest-based targetings or behaviors. And so you can see we can target parents of kids with different ages is a nice one. And so lots of different options there. It'll all pop up. You notice in every time that we do these searches that we are getting an audience size. So it tells you how many people are actually in that audience. So if we click parents with teenagers 13 to 17, it's then going to combine that with our Nashville data restriction. And we will see that our estimated audience is roughly 100,000 people. So that's useful to know when we're thinking about budgeting. What's our CPM? If we're paying $10 per 1,000 people, we're then going to divide that to get our average cost. And remember, we want a frequency target. So we want to reach people 3 to 4 times a week as a minimum. So we're then going to multiply that by 3 or 4, and that gives us a sense of what our budgets should be. Really important, helpful information to know. What else can we target in here? We can go to demographics. You can see you can get as specific as people with birthdays or friends of men with a birthday in 7 to 30 days, right? Really interesting. Newlyweds, household income, company size. You can also target by seniority. So if we want to do seniority, senior management, right? So we can target company size. We could do senior management. Like we do a lot of targeting like that for ourselves. So we will target people in the healthcare industry that have a senior management title with companies over 100 people. And so that gives us a really focused audience for our marketing on Facebook, on LinkedIn, etc. You can find birthdays in here. So you can see people who have birthdays in certain days. That's how you get those advertisements like that. You can look at college education or education in general. So you can see different levels of education, income levels. Now just keep in mind, a lot of this is based on the information that people tell these platforms. So if you look at your Facebook profile, it tells you your relationship status. You can put job updates on there. You can put where you live. That's not always accurate. When was the last time that you updated your Facebook profile? You might even have the wrong city. Maybe you moved 2 years ago and you never updated your Facebook profile. These platforms are using other data. They are pretty sophisticated at this point. And so if they see from your phone and your IP address on your laptop that you're always logging into the same location in Indianapolis, Indiana, even though your profile says that you live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it's going to make the logical conclusion that you've probably moved. So these platforms are pretty smart. It's not always based on what information is in there. They are pulling in other data sources. But also that's why the targeting is not always exactly on point, because people aren't making the updates or there's faulty data in place or whatever the case may be. And here you can see you get your advanced AI targeting. So just an example of where that pulls in. All right, so very, very powerful on these platforms. You can get really, really specific. And I should actually point out, you can target companies. So if we want to target Ford, we can target Ford as an interest or as the actual employer. Same thing with like government. So we can pull up the government down here. Are there government contractors in the job title? Is it an agency interest? Another one, like I mentioned before, was luxury. So if we target people that have an interest in a luxury lifestyle or luxury goods, obviously that gives us a sense that they're more likely to be higher income. Doesn't mean that they are for sure, right? A lot of people that search out luxury vacations don't necessarily have the money for them, but it gives us a better sense if we have multiple targeting components. If we have income level on top of luxury lifestyle searches, that's going to give us a higher probability that we're reaching a higher income audience. You also have these behaviors in here. You can see like purchase behavior, engaged shoppers. What Facebook is doing is it's looking at people that make a lot of purchases on Facebook. When they see an ad, they make a purchase. All that's tracked through Facebook because you went from Facebook to the platform. The platform generally sends that pixel data back. And so they know if you clicked add cart, they know if you checked out, if you bought something. So there is a lot of behavior-based data in here that you can see. The frequent traveler data that I talked to you about, like I'm in that audience, right? Because I'm traveling all the time. Facebook knows that. I've got my location services on. Even if I don't have my location services on, I'm still posting about different places. Maybe I add the location of a restaurant I went to, or maybe I add the location of an airport I'm at. Facebook's going to start piecing that data together and then build my profile around the fact that I am a frequent traveler. And so it knows how to do all of these things. Pretty sophisticated stuff. Okay, so you can see what's possible. You have a lot of power at your fingertips, but then again, AI is coming. It's very up and coming. It's actually more powerful sometimes than what you're able to do manually. So there's this balance that you want to have between allowing the AI to do it and allowing your teams to do it. Now, I also think from a cost benefit perspective, the narrower we make that audience, the more Facebook is going to charge us for it. The broader it is, usually the cheaper it is. So there's also advantages from a cost standpoint. Think of it from a simple numbers perspective as we get into the strategy. Let's say that you're trying to understand what your costs are to reach your target audience. On Facebook, what percentage of the people we reach are actually potential customers? That's going to be based on our targeting and just overall population dynamics. So give an example. So dentists, what percentage of the US population is looking for dental services in a given year? Usually about 70%. So if we're targeting someone on Facebook or X or LinkedIn or any platform, we know that 70% of the people we're reaching are likely to need dental services. That's a great ratio. So if our CPM is $10, we're really paying $10 to reach 750 people that are our potential audience. Now you take something that's smaller, like weight loss. Only about 30% of Americans are looking for a weight loss solution in any given year. So in that situation, out of the 1,000 people I'm paying $10 for, only 300 of them are actual, real potential patients. You get into SUD, that's even less. So about 10% of people are diagnosable with a substance use disorder in a given year. Of that 10%, only about 5% of them actually seek treatment of any kind. So that's actually only a total of 0.5% of people out of our total addressable market, or about, I should say, about the total population of our audience size. And so it's a really small number of people. So if we're marketing for an SUD provider, we want to get a little bit narrower in our targeting and our strategy than we would for a dentist, because a dentist, we can do really broad-based marketing and almost all of those people are potential patients. Whereas for SUD, not so much. We need to be much more narrowly focused. Weight loss is in the middle. We'll come back to those numbers. Now I really want to focus on connecting our audience to particular service lines, to particular locations. When we get really smart about marketing, we have a very focused message that is unique to the patients that we're trying to reach. I'll go into hospitals and they'll have these really generic marketing campaigns. We serve the community. We're here to help. Where you find compassionate care. And the thought process here is we have all these different services. So how do we market all of them? And that's really the wrong way to be thinking most of the time. What you really want to be thinking about is how do we drill down into our service lines that are the highest benefit to the organization? And then how do we create specific campaigns around those service lines? Hospitals are a really good example because there's so many services. What is going to get us the highest return? Is it our cancer treatment? Is it cardiology? Is it orthopedics? And that's where we should have particular marketing budgets focused, because a campaign directed towards those patients is much more likely to get a high value return than if we just said, hey, we provide compassionate care for all of these things. A really good example is a campaign that we ran for insomnia. So there was patients struggling with insomnia that we ran those campaigns from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. every day. And by honing in on the service line and the patient pain points for that particular service line, we were able to get a really good return on those campaigns. Now imagine if we had just run campaigns from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m., advertising all of our services, including insomnia, and saying that we provided quality care. It's just not going to attract patients in the same way as when we get really targeted. Now, on that note, something really important to think about is your budgeting. You should have a budget per service line. Sometimes providers will think that we can just have this one marketing bucket. Everything goes into that. And so we're just going to market general messaging for our different service lines through that. And you should really understand what the value of a particular service line is for you. And that should determine the marketing budget for that service line, because your cancer treatment might be significantly more profitable than your ER services. Now, another way to think about that is what's your entry point? What's your front door? So remember talking about the dental providers and where a teeth whitening service or a free x-ray could be an entry point for a patient to come in. An ER can often be an entry point for a hospital. And so maybe that front door is where we're seeing all of the patients come in for surgeries, for cancer treatments. And so that's a really good marketing tactic, because we can get patients for all these different service lines at an entry point where we commonly connect with them. But we're going to have to understand our throughput. We're going to have to understand what percentage of patients coming from the ER then move into these higher cost services, because we also don't want a situation where we're bringing in a lot of people that we're not getting reimbursed for at all, which can definitely happen within an ER setting. So be smart about what service lines we're promoting, be focused in your budgets. Same thing from a location standpoint. Let's say that we've got 7 locations across Texas, and we've got one in Dallas, we've got San Antonio, we've got Austin, we've got Houston. Now, maybe you acquired those locations. When and before you acquired them, they had a P&L per location. So whoever was running that before your system acquired it, specific marketing budgets for each location. That should still be the case. A mistake a lot of executives will make is they will then make a combined marketing budget. You say, hey, here's our marketing budget for the whole organization, including these 7 locations. Well, each location probably has a different P&L, probably has different patient acquisition goals and targets, and so it should have a separate budget. But more than that, what we're talking about here is connecting your audience to the marketing campaigns. So if you localize those marketing campaigns, they're going to be a lot more effective than if you just had a general message going out across all of Texas. Do we have Houston specific campaigns? Do we have San Antonio specific campaigns? Now, of course, you get some economies of scale, like you only need one marketing director for all those locations. You only need one creative director, or you only need one agency that you're outsourcing to. So there is a limited economy of scale. But at the same time, you still need a certain budget floor to get your patient targets. So let's say our average cost per admission from our search engine optimization channel is $50. And we want to get 100 patients from SEO. So that means that we are going to have to spend $5,000 a month to get that volume of patients in from our SEO channel. That means that we have to spend $5,000 a month for that location. If we have the same goal for our Dallas location, that means we need to be spending $5,000 a month there. So we've got to be thinking about our P&L from a location specific and a service specific standpoint. And then that's going to help us determine what we have available to really hone in on these different audience personas, with geography being one of those key characteristics. Now, another thing that you want to think about is how many stakeholders are involved in a decision. If you're looking at something like cancer treatment, usually there's multiple family members involved. Senior care is usually partly involved by the adult children as well as the individuals themselves. SUD is another good one. So for SUD, about 80% of all inquiries are made by a loved one, and that tends to be a woman in someone's life. So it's usually a mom or a sister or a wife. And so they're usually the first point of contact for the inquiry. And they care about something different than the patient who's actually going to receive the treatment. So the loved one that's calling in, whether it's a husband, a wife, a sister, a brother, they really want their loved one to get better. So they're very focused on the quality of the care, the outcomes that the program has. The patient going into treatment, they're not even the ones calling. So you already know that there's probably a certain level of at least ambivalence regarding care. They're not as focused on the clinical outcomes as they are, will they be respected? Is it a comfortable environment? Are they going to be engaged, or are they going to be bored when they're there? What are they going to get out of the program in terms of a comfort factor on top of potential treatment outcomes? So the messaging that goes to the family member calling in is different from the messaging that goes to the patient. Now, how do you separate that from a marketing standpoint? You can run two different campaigns, but we know that the family members are usually the ones calling in. So if that's the case, we want the majority of our campaigns focus on their concerns, the clinical treatment outcomes. And then what we can do secondarily is we create content through brochures, through email content that we can email out, the website, videos on the website, YouTube channels, and we can showcase our location. We can showcase the maybe engaging therapy modalities. Maybe they have music therapy or art therapy or equine therapy. And so these are things that are going to appeal to the patient. They're like, well, I probably should get treatment. I didn't really want to reach out, but I'm getting pressure from the family here. This is probably the right thing to do, but I want to make sure I want to go somewhere that I'm going to find value in, and it's going to treat me like a human. That's going to make me comfortable. So then the family member can use those secondary materials to basically sell the patient themselves. But we have to think about that sequencing in the messaging, and that comes out when we've done a good job of really understanding who our audience is and connecting strategy to the marketing channels. Following up on that example, I keep bringing up the idea that we have to connect the patient journey. So I have a different psychological mindset based on where we are in the decision-making cycle. So for SUD, for example, if someone's coming off of the Google Ads channel, they're much more likely to be in crisis. So we're actually more likely to get in front of a patient calling for themselves than we would on other channels. We're also more likely to get in front of a loved one that has their family member in crisis. And so their concerns are, do they take my insurance? Is there a bed available? Can I get that person in as soon as possible? That message, in contrast to something we would run on Facebook or X or TV, where they're much more in a consideration stage. So we're talking to people about dependency, codependency, how to talk to someone that's struggling with addiction, these educational messages, comparing and contrasting different kinds of facilities or different therapeutic modalities. That's going to be more valuable to an individual that's still in the consideration stage. So whatever our service lines is, there is a difference in the way that we think about that messaging based on where they are in the decision-making cycle or the patient journey. So that has to be part of our persona strategy. So now getting back to that CPM and the channel decisions. So one thing that I want us to think about is, let's take the weight loss example. So you got 30% of people on average in the US are looking for weight loss services at any given time. That means if I run a generic Facebook campaign to individuals, and let's say I have a $10 CPM. So to reach 1,000 people costs us $10. And we know that about 300 of those people are going to be looking for weight loss services. So I'm actually paying $10 to reach about 300 of our really high target audience. Now, I can go into the back end of Facebook and we narrow targeting down to look at just individuals looking for weight loss services. So in that case, I'm going to be having 1,000 out of 1,000 individuals that are the right target audience, but I might just be paying a little bit more. So maybe I'm paying $30 CPMs because all of these platforms are going to charge us more the more narrow the audience is. And a weight loss audience in particular is usually considered high value. There's a lot of competition there, and so they're going to charge us more. So I'm going to charge 3 times more. But I'm okay with that because I'm getting in front of 3 times more of our target audience. Now, if you think about that, though, it's actually pretty comparable. So I'm paying $10 per 300 of our target audience in the first example where we did really broad targeting. I'm also paying $10 per 300 in the second example, and it's really targeted. Which one should I market to? And you should be marketing to the broader audience. You can say, why? Why would I waste the money, reaching 700 people who are not our target market when we could reach all of these people who are specifically our target market? Well, the cost is comparable, right? But when we're thinking about weight loss, does Facebook know every single person that's looking for weight loss treatment? Obviously not. Are there individuals that might refer to weight loss programming or talk to a friend or a family member or a colleague? Are there professionals that work in adjacent areas of healthcare that might make referrals into weight loss programs? Absolutely. So is there value in us reaching people that are maybe not 100% our target market? There is. So if the cost is comparable between those two campaigns, I would rather have the $10 per 300 targeted plus the 700 untargeted, because that's going to get me basically free advertising into the community to build reputation. I highly recommend viewing the Kellogg's case study for an example of why this is so important. A simple example maybe from previous marketing would be if we're doing magazine advertising. So if I'm advertising in Field and Stream and I'm trying to reach hunters and fishermen, well, is every hunter and fisherman using Field and Stream magazine? Absolutely not. Is there a value in getting in front of people that know hunters and fishermen? Yes, 100% there is. So if I can get a comparable cost to do broad-based marketing and still reach a percentage of my target market, then that is actually more valuable than just reaching the target market. So always be thinking about your CPMs in terms of this overall cost and do a cost benefit analysis on the total audience that you're reaching, even if that audience is adjacent rather than primary, because they can still bring a lot of value, especially if there's a comparable cost on another channel that might be more targeted. You want to note on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. This is something that comes up for providers from time to time. It can be a very difficult conversation because it's pretty politically charged. It shouldn't be. We should be looking at all of our marketing campaigns from a potential ROI standpoint. Any campaign that our team or our agency brings to us as an executive, we're always asking, well, is this the right strategy? What's the ROI for this campaign? So we should be doing the exact same thing if someone gives us a campaign that might have more of a socio-political, cultural context. So something to start with would be like diversity in general, oftentimes, especially if we've got like a younger CMO or maybe a younger creative director, an agency that we're taking over from. We'll see a lot of diversity on the images and the marketing materials. Now, if you're, as a healthcare provider, if you are serving a really diverse community, that's absolutely what you should be doing. As I talked about in the beginning, your imagery should match the patient population that you're serving. And so if you're serving a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, then your imagery should match that. But let's say that you are in a primarily Black community. So you have 95% Black individuals and you have 5% Latino individuals in your community. Well, then your marketing materials should reflect that community. So we don't want general blanket diversity in our imagery. We want to reflect our community and the patients that we serve. So we would have primarily images with Black individuals and a couple images here or there with Latino individuals. And that would be the best way to make sure that we're connecting patients to care that's going to be successful for us as an organization. Another example, SUD is a good one here. So if you look at especially residential levels of care, most individuals going into treatment are white. And you have about 60 to 75% of individuals are men. So do we want to run a campaign to Asian American women as a residential treatment provider? No, that wouldn't be very smart. That would be an inefficient use of our marketing dollars. Just like I would not want to run campaigns for perfume to men because most people that buy perfume are women. It doesn't make sense for us to spend money in a direction that's not going to have the best ROI for us. Now, you might, as an organization, say, "Hey, we have certain mission, we have a certain mission statement, we have certain values, and even though we don't see a lot of Asian Americans coming into treatment, we want to encourage more Asian Americans to come into addiction treatment services. And so we're going to spend a lot of money on that just to see if we can get more Asian Americans into our care." Perfectly fine if you want to do that, but we should be having that ROI conversation. If I can run a marketing campaign and I can get 10 patients that's going to a white community, and I can get 0 or 1 patients from an Asian American community, which campaign should we be running from an ROI standpoint? So it's obviously the campaign that's going to the patients that are most likely to utilize our healthcare services. If we're going to make a mission-driven goal, then we have to do that with the understanding that it's going to be a loss potentially. So that should always be part of the conversations that we're having with our teams or with our agencies. Another really good example that I often come across is like Pride Month for LGBTQ. So you got 2 campaigns that we're running. We're running a campaign for cancer treatment and just a general campaign for cancer treatment services. And then we could run the same campaign, but we have an LGBTQ orientation for Pride Month. Which of these campaigns is going to get us better results? That should be what determines which campaign we run. So maybe we have very specialized services for individuals from different sexual or gender identities. If that's the case, then the Pride campaign is probably going to be the right one because we specialize in it, we're good at it. But if we're just running generic healthcare services that don't have anything special for individuals from different gender or sexual identities, then why would we want to create special campaigns for a patient population that we don't serve differently or particularly well compared to any other patient population? That ROI conversation should be the focus of any campaigns that your team is presenting. And again, sometimes it can be a very charged conversation. But another point I'll often make is, do we take a stance on any other campaign types that might have a socio-political or cultural message to them? Are we running campaigns around gun safety? Are we running campaigns around abortion? Are we running campaigns for suicide prevention? When it's Nature Conservation Month, are we running campaigns to save the whales? So why are we running a campaign here with maybe a certain social, political, or cultural cause when we don't do that anywhere else, especially if there's not a clear ROI to it? So again, if the ROI is there, if you run specialized services and this is a patient population you serve really well, and it makes sense from a financial sustainability and financial success metric to do that, then that's where you need to be marketing. But if that's not an advantage to your organization, then there should be a much stronger discussion around, well, why aren't we prioritizing the return on this campaign when we do on all of our other campaigns? So that's how I often recommend for individuals to think about the DEI component of their marketing messaging. Everything we do is building trust. So always keep that in mind. How are we building trust with the patients that we are trying to reach, who we serve best, who are coming into our care? And remember that connection between the cost and trust. So the more something costs in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of effort, the more people are going to think about it, and the more information they need, the more trust you need to build. Have you ever gone on Facebook or a different platform and seen a shirt or a book or maybe a toy for one of your kids? It was like $20 and you just bought it. Happens all the time because it's $20. Nobody really cares that much. But now let's imagine that you've got something that's going to cost you $500 or $1,000. Are you just going to make a snap impulse buy on that? Absolutely not. You're going to research it. You're going to look at reviews. You're going to compare other models. Same thing if you're looking at a really high-end vacation. And so now I've got a lot of money I'm going to drop here for me and my family to go away. I want this to be a great experience. I want there to be great memories. Are we going to make a snap decision based off an advertisement? Absolutely not. We are going to look at reviews. We are going to research different packages. We're going to look at the value of different packages. How does it fit with our needs or our family's needs? And so we need lots of information in those situations. So an individual that's marketing for that company is going to need to make sure that they're putting messaging out there that is talking about the consideration phase and helping people understand the value of their particular vacation package versus others, or who's the right person for their vacation package. Does it appeal to busy executives? Does it appeal to families with kids? Does it appeal to senior citizens who want to go with other senior citizens? They have to understand that audience, and then the fact that it's going to be a pretty significant decision for them to spend all that money. So we need different marketing tactics in those situations. A pretty quick FAQ for this one, as we've answered most of these questions in depth throughout this training already. How do we determine our audience? Talk to them. Talk to your patients, see what's important to them, look and see which patients you tend to serve the most. And then if you really don't know, or if you have some question marks about maybe some different patient populations, then split test it. Build different audiences on the back of your digital platforms, test different messaging, test different timing, and see which audiences respond. That's going to give you an idea of who your ideal audience is. How do you evaluate messaging efficacy? Really should be coming down to your qualified inquiry volume. So that example I gave of the difference between happy imagery and negative imagery. And if you have happy imagery, you'll often get a lot of engagement. You'll get a lot of clicks. You'll get a lot of likes. You'll get a lot of comments from people who already are in a good place, who have already maybe utilized the solution that you're providing as a healthcare provider. Now, if I've got dark messaging in there, now I might not get as many likes, right? Like if I'm in a bad place in my life, am I going to like an ad that reflects that? Am I even going to comment on it? Probably not, because I don't even want people to know that I'm struggling with this particular issue. I'm kind of embarrassed about it. Maybe there's stigma around it, but I am going to call. So the positive campaign might get tons of engagement, but very few inquiries. Whereas a negative campaign gets almost no engagement, but gets a high number of inquiries. At the end of the day, qualified inquiry volume is our success metric for evaluating messaging efficacy for a particular audience. What's the best way to reach our audience? We just have to understand where they are. And we're always thinking about that CPM perspective. How much is it costing us to reach a particular audience on a particular channel at a particular part of the patient journey? I might be willing to pay more for individuals that are at the final decision-making stage versus individuals that are still not even quite sure what they want to do. Then how do we get people to choose us? Obviously, right message, right place, right time. So if you use the information in this training, you should have a really good sense of what the answer to all of these questions is. And I hope that will make your marketing campaigns or the marketing campaigns that you're overseeing that much more successful.